What's up, pals? Welcome back to the channel. With Elden Ring being the large open world that it is, knowing how to progress can be a difficult challenge for any new player. As such, I have prepared a couple of things to help you on your journey in the lands between. The first is a natural progression guide to suggest how you can play through the game in a natural, balanced way. The second is a way for you to become reasonably overpowered before entering the capital, so stay till the end to find out how we do that. If you like this kind of content and would like to see more of it, please like and subscribe and leave a comment on other guides or videos you would like to see in the future. For your first playthrough, I highly recommend you progress naturally just to experience the game as it was intended. And if you're hungry for more, you can always start a new character and try again with the OP progression that we'll show you later on. Our journey starts in Limgrave, which has some notable areas to stop by. First thing to do is head straight for the gatefront side of Grace to acquire Torrent. This will make traversing the lands between infinitely easier and also goes towards setting up some of the key graces you can use to fast travel. If you open your map, you can see these icons, which show you where the map fragments can be found, which can be very useful for exploring new areas. Once Torrent is acquired, your next stop should be the Third Church of Marika to grab the Mixed Physic, which you can combine crystal tears with in order to provide a wide variety of different effects and buffs to your character. And I'm only really telling you about this now because I did not know of its existence in my first playthrough until I was in the mountaintops of Giants, which was a big yikes. Now in your map, if you have the map fragment, you can see these large trees. These are minor Erd trees and they are always worth the visit since this is where you will typically find crystal tears for your physic. Also available in most churches, you will find a sacred tear, which will increase the potency of your crimson and cerulean flasks, so be sure to visit these often if you come across them. And one final tip before we really get into the guide is that once you have obtained the map fragment, look for what seems to be a burn mark on the map. These denote a mining cavern, which will always have upgraded materials to pick up, and you can use those to upgrade your weapons. Stormveil Castle in Limgrave is the main legacy dungeon in the area, but I don't recommend running straight there. Instead, you should start with the Weeping Peninsula area to the south. There is a legacy dungeon here, as well as a few caves and catacombs. For the most part, this area is relatively easy and will provide you with plenty of runes to start leveling up. Then, once Weeping Peninsula is out of the way, you can start working your way towards Stormveil Castle, making sure to explore a little bit to find some of those other caves and catacombs and any interesting areas that you might want to check out. The reason why I suggest doing Weeping Peninsula first is because of the first boss in the castle, Margit. He can seriously gatekeep any new player that hasn't taken the time to explore the world for runes and materials. You should look to be between levels 20 and 30 before taking him on for the first time. In Stormveil, as difficult as it seems, make sure to at least reach the site of Grace on the bridge leading to the Divine Tower. You'll want to revisit after beating Godric to activate the Great Rune, which is an excellent rune for the early to mid game. There are a lot of things to do in the first area, and that's why I covered it in depth like I did. And I'm not even really touching on any of the quests available or the NPCs in the area, so if that's something you would like to see or you're interested in, you can let me know. Maybe we'll cover it in the future. Once Stormveil is out of the way, we can now move towards Liurnia. Liurnia is quite large, with a good chunk of caves and catacombs as well as 3 legacy dungeons, 2 of which I recommend doing. The first of those 2 is the Academy of Raya Lucaria, which lies in the middle of the lake, and this is where you will find the second Shardbearer to fight, who notably gives you the Rune of Rebirth, which will allow you to reallocate your stats if given a larval tier. To the northwest, you will find Caria Manor, which is where Ranni is located, as well as a treasure trove of useful items that you can find within that dungeon itself. Finally, there is the Ruin-strewn Precipice, which is a mining dungeon that will take you to Altus. The precipice itself is optional, but if you haven't found the Dectus medallion pieces, you can head through here to continue progressing the game. There is an optional area in Siofra River which can be accessed in Limgrave that may be a good place to explore. There are no main bosses in this area, only optional, and it can be done either before Liurnia or after. At one end of the area, however, is a lift that will lead you to the Colosseum in Caelid, which is noteworthy, so if you're looking to do some PvP and want to unlock all of the Colosseums, you will have to come down here anyway. I should also note the Ainsel River area under Liurnia, though I'm not sure if it's absolutely necessary to visit unless you're looking for some of the items that are down there, which the boss drops a pretty cool item and there's a merchant, but it can be a little bit of it's just kind of a weird area. It's not one I visit all the time. Once we wrap up Liurnia, we have a couple of options. You can continue pushing north into Altus and work your way towards the capital, stopping at the Shaded Castle along the way. You should also detour towards Mount Gelmir and Volcano Manor so you can start the request from Tanith. The requests from Tanith allow you to bypass doing the Volcano Manor dungeon on its own. You should still probably do it just for the experience, but in my opinion, the requests and the rewards you get from doing those requests are well worth it, because not only do you get a reward from Tanith, you also usually end up with like a really sweet, some pretty sweet items from the enemies that you kill in the invasions. So, just something of note, keep in mind, check it out if you want to. Now the other option is to backtrack to the southeast to tackle southern Caelid. Caelid is basically hell on earth. This place is pretty wild, but this is where you'll find Millicent, an NPC. She's got a pretty interesting quest line, and Radahn, who's another shard bearer, in which defeating him will grant you access to Nokron, as well as being just a kind of a big plot point for Ranni's quest. However, I do have to kind of stress this is all the southern portion of Caelid. The northern portion, also known as Dragon's Barrow, is a much higher level than the rest of Caelid, and I would save this portion until after you have finished the capital or the mountaintops of giants. The bosses here they hit harder, they have a higher health pool, they drop more runes. It'll be one tough time if you think you could just roll up in there and start taking some of these guys out. Now, if you chose the Caelid route, then it would be worth your time to stop in Nokron to get some of the items here, as well as to progress Ranni's questline a little bit further. Alternatively, working through the capital will progress the story, so it really just kind of depends on what you want to do. After the capital, your progression forward becomes a little bit more linear than it was before. You can continue with your quest to burn the Erdtree in the mountaintops of giants, which will eventually lead you to crumbling Farum Azula. Or you can make your way north of the freezing lake to reach Castle Sol. Essentially, you are entering the endgame either way. Doing Castle Sol will grant you access to the consecrated snowfields and eventually the Haligtree, which is home to who is arguably the hardest boss in a FromSoft game, Malenia. If you are up to it, you can start this now, but it's otherwise doable at any other point after you beat the game. Or you can progress through Farum, defeating Malekith, and officially burning the tree down to gain access to Leyndell, capital of Ash, which is just an endgame boss rush to complete the game's main story. There are a couple of areas I didn't cover. Those areas are Mohg's Mausoleum and Nokstella. The Mausoleum can be accessed at any time if you have done Vare's quest, or there is a sending gate in the north end of the consecrated snowfields that will teleport you there. As such, you should consider this an endgame area. The enemies here can be difficult, but it's worth it to go there at any point. Nokstella, on the other hand, is only accessible by doing Ranni's quest to a point in which Morena's Tower in Caria Manor is unlocked, and you can use the sending gate there to teleport you into the other half of the Ainsel River area. And then from there you can progress into Nokstella. Now, it's a necessary part of Ranni's quest, and it will give you access to the Moonlight Altar, which is this little plateau in Liurnia that you didn't have access to previously. So this is the gist of it, but do keep in mind that you can and should be exploring each area so as not to miss out on NPCs and useful items. And with all that being said, I think it's time to give you a method in which you can be super overpowered before reaching the capital. Now, we can do this all without fighting a single boss for the most part, or if we do have to fight one, we'll be pretty strong at that point. It won't be much of a challenge. So let's break this down. We're going to set things up so you can have a +6 Sombra weapon, +10 if you can manage the Volcano Manor skip, or a +12 standard weapon before fighting Margit. You can do this with any build and any weapon, though I prefer a Sombra weapon since we'll be able to fully upgrade it relatively quick. Basically, we will want to be looking for what I call the guys in chairs, which can be looted for Sombra smithing stones. So Sombra 1 can be found on a body on the east side of Lake Agil past the bridge, which at night is guarded by a knight's cavalry. So on your map there's this little fallen ruins that lies in the lake. It's on the cliff next to that is where you'll find the guy in the chair. Sombra 2, you can earn one by doing Blythe's quest after defeating Darwyl. which this doesn't require a trip out of Limgrave, but Blythe's quest is kind of a mess to start in the first place. It's kind of, it's seriously obscure, I guess. But if you don't want to do Blythe's stuff, you can just head to the beach southeast of Morn's Castle, and you will find a guy in the chair there with a somber smithing stone too. Somber 3 is located on a body in North Liurnia by the shore. Somber 4 can be located on a body located near the ravine entrance in Liurnia. Somber 5 can be required in Redmane Castle, or on a cliff outside of the capital outer wall to the north. Somber 6 can be located near First Mount Gelmer campsite Grace. Somber 7 is where things get weird. If you can perform frame-perfect jumps, you can get the one in Volcano Manor that's guarded by an abductor virgin, or you will have to either gain access to the Lanedale sewers or Noxtella. Luckily, choosing Radahn with Rot or a Somber 6 weapon will do the trick here. Also, a Somber 6 weapon will do the trick on the Draconic Tree Sentinel as well, so it just really kind of depends on which boss you want to tackle first. I mean, you can't really get into Lanedale until you kill 2 Shardbearers anyway, so you might as well just go for Radahn, in my opinion. Somber 8 and 9 are both located near each other in Dragonsbarrow. From the Dragonsbarrow Grace, there is a cliff near the Divine Tower with a Teardrop Beetle that contains the Somber 8. Below that cliff is an area with a bunch of guys in chairs in which you can obtain a Somber 9. The Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, boy isn't that a mouthful, can be acquired by doing Vari's quest and is found in a chest near the Midpoint Mausoleum Grace in Mohg's area. I've done a rundown on how to do Vari's quest in my farming video, so if you want the full rundown, the link is in the top right of the video and in the description. I will note that you will have to beat a Shardbearer to gain access to the 2 fingers in order to progress Vari's quest, and personally, I would say just shoot for Radahn. If you have the +6 already with summons, a well-upgraded weapon, and maybe some Scarlet Rod, you could do this pretty early on. Or you could just take that +6 weapon to fight Margit and Godric. They will be pretty trivial at that point, even without leveling up, I think. So there is that. I would also say that killing Grail for the 70,000 runes would also increase your chances at taking Radahn out early as well. So you have some options in terms of how you want to initiate the second part of Vari's quest, and then you can just kind of follow what the farming guide says to get in there afterwards. Reaching a +10 Somber weapon before the capital will really trivialize a majority of the bosses leading up to that point, and because of that you'll be able to level up very quickly, and it's probably more efficient than just simply farming in a spot in the first place, because bosses drop quite a bit of runes and you can kind of just run through an area basically one-tapping things for a couple of areas, honestly, and then, well, with the exception of some bosses, I think. I mentioned a relatively high level of standard weapons as well, which can be done by acquiring the Smithing Stone Bell-Bearing 1 and 2 before even touching a main boss. We can do this by first heading to Fort Height in Limgrave, and Fort Ferrith and Caelid to acquire both halves of the Dectus Medallion. Then you take the side path from the Stormhill Shack, Grace, to access Liurnia without fighting Godric. If you follow the eastern side of the lake moving north, you will eventually come across Raya Lucaria tunnels, in which defeating the boss here gives you the first bell bearing. It's a Crystallion. Once you break their poise, it's a cakewalk, so just go in there and spam jump attacks, you got this. From the ravine entrance in North Liurnia, you can access Bellum Church, and then head north, in which you will reach the Dectus Lift, accessing Altus and conveniently starting the Radahn Festival. Inside the outer wall of the capital, you can then head northwest to a small ravine that has a mining cavern, and you don't even need to beat the boss here. You just follow the pathing to the chest, and that's where the second bell bearing is. So you can now purchase Smithing Stone 1 through 4 and have the ability to upgrade a standard weapon to +12 without fighting a major boss. Sack Grail as well. For the runes, you'll need to pull this off, and you can smash most of the bosses leading to the capital with ease. This method is perfect for subsequent playthroughs, or if you're working on doing some PvP shenanigans down the line. Maybe you want to do a cosplay build and don't want to waste hours in the early parts of the game, you know what I mean? So it really just kind of shortens up the overall playtime, I think, and it makes it a little bit fun because you get to have a little bit of that power fantasy. So that's it for my guide. Let me know if I missed something in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been Alpal. Be kind, be safe, spread the love, and we'll see you next time. Peace.